My freshman year, I remember sitting in a seat as I listened to my first senior reflection. I knew that in 3 years' time, I would be there as well, talking to all of you. This draft here is not my first, or even my second or my third. Even this morning in anatomy and physiology, I made plenty of changes. I spent years coming up with what I thought was great advice and what I wanted to pass on. There was a lot of effort I put in to make sure that the advice I gave would be original and different from what I've heard for the past 3 years. I would write one reflection, not like it, and then trash it. I'd write another, and dislike that one as well. Finally, I realized what the missing piece was. All of my previous drafts, they weren't personal. I was putting a space between myself, the speaker, and you all, the audience. Though subconscious, it was intentional. Last night, I threw what I had prepared away and came up with this. It's as personal as I'm able to get at this time in my life. Who knows, things might change by next week, and I might be able to share some things people don't know about my story. I finally decided that I was going to come, presenting myself as I am for all of you, Monet S, and tell you my story. It's not that easy condensing your whole life story into such a short amount of time. My life up till age 7 was pretty average. I was born into a white middle-class family with a brother who's 2 years and 3 months older and a brother who's 15 months younger. I had a typical relationship with my brother where he's the younger, annoying one who liked to intentionally get on my nerves, though that's changed, mostly. I had a dog, a cat, a big yard, and like every other kid, I'd get up on Saturdays and pop myself in front of the telly and eat a bowl of cereal. It was about as average as you can get. My education began at 3 when I learned how to read while listening in on my mother teaching my older brother, Roman, to read while I sat on the floor coloring. It finally gave me an outlet and something to pour myself and my curiosity into. Reading changed my life, I know, what a nerd. But as a homeschooled kid, it was my connection to the outside world. The books I read made school sound incredibly fun, but also incredibly terrifying. And when 3rd grade rolled around, I jumped at the opportunity to go to school. In late August, I attended a school and loved it, but I was naive because I didn't know how the world worked and thought everything and everyone was good. I wasn't aware at the time that when I couldn't find the other girls at recess, it wasn't because they were off playing, it's because they were avoiding me. I didn't realize that when I couldn't find the homework that I'd sworn I'd left on my desk, it wasn't missing. Someone had just taken it for themselves. I didn't realize that when I didn't have a snack in my lunchbox for recess, it wasn't because my mom had just forgotten to pack me one. It's someone else felt it was theirs to take. It sounds sad, but honestly it wasn't because, as I said before, I was naive and unaware. Now I realize they were just mean because I was the only 3rd grader in the 7th and 8th grade reading group, and there were older kids there that they wanted to hang out with. And they told me this later when we all actually ended up becoming friends. Reading was my safe place, so I excelled in it, and I spent every free moment I could curled up in a book. In 5th grade, we had a new teacher, and at the end of math class on the first day, she asked me to stay behind. She told me that the next day I would be starting 6th grade, so I should enjoy my one day as a 5th grader. As you could imagine, that didn't help my relationship with those girls. But after that, I became friends with them, and middle school actually ended up being a really great time for me. But suddenly, it was over, and I had to start high school as a 13-year-old. My parents and I thought it would be best that I be homeschooled for my freshman year and then transfer to IMS as a sophomore. Unfortunately, after the first quarter, the principal of IMS at the time said that he wouldn't accept my homeschooling credits if I came as a sophomore. This meant that I'd have to do freshman year over again, and not wanting to be in high school for 5 years, I made my transfer, and the next day, I was at IMS. Although I was confident in myself, I wasn't confident in my place in the world, so I was shy my first year at IMS. It seemed like everyone already had their set friends and had known each other forever. There were different groups and people I tried becoming friends with, but it didn't seem to work out. There was one girl I tried to be friends with, but her other friend didn't seem to want me there, so I left. Another girl I seemed to have similar interests with, but she seemed too quiet for me to be friends with. Another girl I rode with on the bus to school every day, and our conversations consisted of animals and her pet lizard that she had called Freddie until she found out it was a boy. Now it was Fred. Oh, and we talked about locker shelves. Now, these 3 ladies actually ended up becoming some of my closest friends. I was in PE, I'm not gonna lie, because I'm not athletic, I got nothing out of PE besides my first friend. You begin to form a pretty good relationship with someone after you've hit the birdie behind the bleachers for the 11th time during badminton. Still, I was depressed and alone, and I didn't know if I wanted to come back, but I decided to give sophomore year another go. If you feel discouraged at all in your life, know it does get better. Sophomore year got worse for me before it got better during the last quarter. It seemed like everyone else was loving life, and I was a hollow man. The thing that helped me not be discouraged was my mother telling me that often people who peak in high school aren't as successful in adulthood, because that's it. They've peaked in their life, and now it's downhill from there. I couldn't figure out why I felt so down. After all, I didn't have to worry about a family member getting deported. I didn't have to worry about how I'm going to afford college. I don't have to worry about taking care of my younger siblings while my mom goes out drinking. So it seemed like I had no excuse for feeling the way I did. It felt like my pain wasn't real. It didn't make sense that I'd be at school and feel fine, but then I'd go home, and being away from the hustle and bustle, I was alone with my thoughts. At home, I couldn't distract myself, so my thoughts would be plagued with pain and destruction, wanting to lash out against anything. It didn't feel fair that I felt this way when it wasn't validated, when there wasn't a distinct cause. Later, I learned that struggling with depression is an inherited thing in my family. Anxiety attacks, also another thing that is inherited in my family. There's a chemical imbalance in my body, which explained why there were days where I told my mom I was sick, so I didn't have to tell her I actually felt too depressed to even get out of bed and go to school. This might sound like a contradictory statement, but you can be depressed and still be happy. Depression isn't necessarily a constant state, and there can be swings in your mood. That doesn't make what you're feeling fake. The biggest thing on how to deal with depression is your coping skills. As much as I hate to admit it, I have terrible coping skills and did about all the bad coping skills there are in the book. I wasn't aware that things had gotten as bad as they were until I went to the doctor during my junior year, and she asked me how much exercise I got. I told her I was in volleyball and it was the end of the season, and I'd been getting pretty good exercise. That's when she told me, even still, you've gained over 30 pounds since I've seen you last. That moment made me realize that something in my life had to be changed, and I had to deal with what I was feeling, some way or another, in a healthy way. I got on medication, and that was hard at first because I wanted results right then and there, but I wasn't getting them. It took a while to find something that was effective, but I finally found something. I don't like talking about my problems to myself, which is why what I'm doing right now is a big step for me. I like to hold my cards close because I feel like people are out to get me, and if they find this stuff out about me, they'll gossip and they'll destroy me. That's kind of when I realized, if any of you know Parks and Rec, good show, I recommend watching. So there's this guy named Jerry, and Jerry's kind of the guy that everybody makes fun of because he's really clumsy and kind of he's a goofball. And so then Jerry retires and he leaves, and as there's a pecking order with things, there needs to be a new sort of Jerry. And so there's a guy named Tom, and he ends up becoming the new Jerry, and he does not like it at all. So he tries to make Andy, who's this fun-loving, goofball, sort of dumb guy, become the new Jerry. This doesn't work, and he's frustrated by it until Ron Swanson tells him essentially that you can't really make him the new Jerry because he doesn't care what people think enough for him to feel shame about what he's been through. And so that kind of changed my mindset on things. So I guess that's why I'm putting this out there. It's not everything, but it's there. I needed someone who I could talk to, who I knew legally couldn't tell other people my stuff, which is why I got a therapist. I still have a therapist, and if we're being completely honest, I saw her yesterday, and she was wonderful. Don't let those feelings put you down in a funk and discourage you from living life. Also, don't assume that because someone looks like they have their life together, they actually do. No one is perfectly put together, and that's why it's in human nature to strive for what's better. I understand that sometimes you feel like your expectations for life will never be met. And that's true. No one gets a perfect life, but that doesn't mean you can't have a happy life. Learn to love yourself to the point that no matter what anyone says or does, no matter what life throws at you, you can still find a way to persevere and love your life.